Hey guys, it's Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Welcome back to my channel. So I have completed days 1 through 15 of 30 inks, 30 days. And here I am ready to complete days 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 8 days. So days 16 through 23. So I will keep track of it in my B6 Galen leather notebook with 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. And then I will keep track of it. Oh, where did I put it all the way over here? In my Hobonichi cousin that I will use daily for journaling. And then I will also keep track of it in my Hobonichi A5 notebook where I am transcribing Anne of Green Gables, but also doing little florals, things like that. All right, let's get started. Day 16, and we have Wearingeul White Rabbit in my Sailor Pro Gear White Rose Gold. And I was just pointing out how I stained this the last time I did 30 inks, 30 days, which I'm really mad about. But the sample ink vial holder is actually from Fountain Pendulum, and I'll link them down in the description below. So I place a drop there on the page and swirl it around with my sample ink vial and then write the day as well as the name of the ink. And I like being able to see all of the inks for 30 inks in 30 days in this grid so that I can see all of the inks in one spot. The next thing I do is similar to what I do for my currently inked is I list all of the inks down on this particular page. And I do this rectangle so that I can see or gauge the wetness of this ink with this nib. And so far, normally my Sailor Pro Gear in the White Rose Gold with this medium fine nib is quite a good writer, but I find the two of these combined, the medium fine on this feels a little scratchy and the ink feels a little dry, and it is quite light. So I'm wondering what would happen if I decided to add a little bit of the Van Ness White Lightning to it, similar to what I did with Colorverse Alpha Aries, which is a very similar colorway. I mean, there on the swatches, it looks beautiful. I really like the shading in this, and I think it would be great for artwork, but for writing, I don't know if it's the most practical of inks. This is the thing I like about Wearingeul, is that they have beautiful shades of color and they do the light colors really well, but they're good for painting. Like, they're really good for painting, and that's what I'm doing here, is painting flowers and trying to work on the texturing, well, basically not texturing, but like the pressure that I'm adding on the paintbrush, because painting on Tomoe River paper with fountain pen ink is certainly different than painting on watercolor paper with watercolors. But you see, this ink is really good as a paint, but when I write with it, it's just too light. And almost the combination between or with the Sailor Pro Gear, it's too light, it's too dry. I'm not a fan of this combination, unfortunately. It's so pretty, and I know so many people love it. I mean, look at this shading here, absolutely gorgeous. But when I write with it, it starts off being really good and really legible, but the longer that I write with it for, the lighter it gets. So I think there could be an issue with the way that the Sailor Pro Gear caps, but otherwise this may not be an ink that I would investigate or explore any further, but I probably would use it in more painting. So that is Wearingeul White Rabbit. Day 17, we have Diamine Inkvent Olive Swirl, and this one was given to me by Corinne when she sold me her Leonardo Frore Aqua Petra, and I am putting it in my Pelikan M400 in the white tortoiseshell. Isn't it a really good match for this? I think it's a really, really good match for this pen. Wait, I'm spoiling it. I haven't even shown you what the ink looks like, and I'm spoiling it for what it looks like with this pen. So I'm putting a drop here on my grid for 30 days, 30 inks, and swirling it with my sample ink vial. I find this way of swatching with the sample ink vial, it creates very little mess, but then you're also not losing a lot of the ink when you're using a cotton swab, for example. But look at the way that this ink looks on the paper. It's this kind of olivey green with a really, really beautiful shimmer, and I think it matches perfectly with the Pelikan M400. This has an extra fine nib, and Pelikans do run very wet as well, and I really like the combination of these two. So I didn't have any hesitation hesitation with putting this ink in this pen, because I knew that with how wet this pen normally writes, I wouldn't get any types of blockage or anything like that with the ink. So putting this down on my Hobonichi cousin with the sandwich bag method. I love this method because, again, it's a great way to get the unique shapes and unique characteristics out of the ink, but also it's easy cleanup. And I'm not using a ton of supplies. I'm using the same bag over and over again and just washing it over and over in between different inks. The next thing I do with my inks is paint. So with the painting, I decided to try different methods and try and do different things. So this one, I'm painting leaves. And with painting leaves, you really are working on the pressure of your brush on the page. So very, very light pressure, and then working on heavy pressure, and then light pressure again. So it's kind of like brush lettering, but with a paintbrush and with fountain pen ink. And I'm adding just a few more details here. So the more ink that I add, there's going to be more shimmer on the page. And this is where I'm going to be transcribing Anne of Green Gables. So by doing this, it allows me the opportunity to use the pen and ink combination in writing with it for more than 3 pages really. So I'm writing it here in my Hobonichi cousin, and look at that green shimmer. It's fantastic. And then I have 2 pages here where I've transcribed Anne in Green Gables, and that allows me a lot of experience, well, a lot, but a bit of experience with this pen and ink, and I really, really like this ink. This is one that I think I will keep for the future and definitely use again, probably for the Christmas season, because look at the way that this shimmers. Now, the shimmer wasn't completely consistent throughout the whole writing sample, but the color is still gorgeous. So that is Diamine Olive Swirl. Day 18, and we have a Birmingham Penco Basil Pesto, and I'm putting this in my Le Bon Rosa Lilac. And this did have a medium Bach nib, but I had this ground by Kirk Spear at the San Francisco Pen Show, and I had him grind it to a medium fine. And I'm putting a little drop there on the page. And just as a side note, look at Olive Swirl. Like, look at the shimmer. The thing here with Basil Pesto though is that if you can see that, it looks like there's a little bit yellow orange in that wet ink drop there, but when it dries, and I'm going to show you this shortly, when it dries to this gorgeous muted green. So now with my Le Bon Rosa Lilac, this was always a wet writer, but I found the medium nib just a little bit too broad for me. So now that I have it as a medium fine ground by Kirk Spear, it is the perfect pen for me. I really, really like it. And the combination with Birmingham Penco Basil Pesto worked really, really well. So putting a few drops in my Hobonichi cousin and swirling it around with the sandwich bag. The key with the sandwich bag that I found is that you need to have a lot of wrinkles in this bag. So it has to be well loved, well used, so that the ink has those little veins to travel to get those really unique shapes. So here I am decided to paint a pumpkin with the Basil Pesto ink, and you'll be able to see here that the ink goes down. There's like a little bit more of a yellow or orangey tinge to it, but then when it dries, I'm going to show you that shortly, when it dries, it's so different. It's more of a muted pastel green, and I love this ink. I really love this ink. I think it's a great fall ink. And also the flow in it is really good as well. I like painting with the fountain pen inks, especially on Tomoe River paper, because 1, it's a medium not many people use, but 2, it definitely brings out the different shading properties of fountain pen inks, which you don't always get with watercolor paper. But oh, look at the shading, just absolutely, absolutely gorgeous. And plus it's so fun painting with fountain pen ink because it is so different. And because I have so many samples that I need to get through, this for me is just a great way to be able to use it and to try out different ways of experimenting and exploring the ink. So then you can see there the way that the ink is drying in that pumpkin. It had that little yellow orangey tinge, and now it is drying into that green ink. So I'm going to show you here actually when you're writing with it. I know it's a little hard to see with this view, but you can compare it to the dried writing sample above it compared to what I'm writing, and you can see that there are those hints of yellow and orange, and then it dries to that more muted green. It's such an interesting ink. I really, really like this ink, and I will well, I hope to use it again in the future. So there you see it in the dried sandwich bag splotches and then in the painting. So it does look different from when it first goes down. And the combination of my Liban Rosa Lilac with this ink was a great combination. The wetness and the flow. And I love this pen, not just because it is so pretty, but because it fits really well in the hand and I could have found myself writing more than just these pages with it. So I really like this pen and ink combination. That is Birmingham Penco Basil Pesto. Day 19, we have Vinta Blue Blood. Is it Duzong Bugao? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get this name totally wrong. It is Duzong Bugao. And this was an ink that was given to me by Pam at the San Francisco Pen Show. And I'm inking it up in my On a Whim Woodworks Cool Tone Primary Manipulation pen. So placing a drop there on my 30 days grid and swirling it around with my sample ink vial. I love this method. It's a really beautiful rich blue, but you can already see how it's such a heavy sheener. It worked really well in the extra fine Bach nib that I have in this pen. But one of the things that I do have to say, it's Duzong Bugao, which means royal blood, actually, or to have royal blood. I love this pen. It's such a gorgeous, beautiful looking pen, and it feels so great in the hand. And at first, I really liked this ink, but you can even see while I'm drawing or filling out this rectangle, that sheen is so prominent and showing up so quickly. And I'm very, very light sensitive. So the sheen, once it reflected off the light, or once the light was reflecting off of it, actually gave me a little bit of a headache. And this is one that I have actually already given away. This is not one that I would continue to explore after this, but I'm glad I had the chance to try this particular Vinta ink. So again, with the sandwich bag method, this method will definitely let you see the different shading properties, the sheening, and the shimmer as well. So this is a great way to be able to see all of those properties. And another great way to do that as well is by painting. And actually adding a bit of water, you get to see different layers of this ink. So I decided to do a rose again in this because one, I love painting a rose. It's quite easy, but also with the rose, you get the different saturations of the ink. If you add more water, you're going to get a lighter, less saturated, more diluted ink, and then you go back in there with the more saturated ink and then you will see more of that sheen come through and be more prominent. So highly recommend trying to paint with your fountain pen inks if you are wondering how to use them. But look at that sheen. This is such a crazy heavy sheener and it's beautiful, but it was just a bit too much for me. And look at the way, I love the base color of this, but the sheen really just overpowers the writing sample, as you can see here. So I also found that there were a few hard starts with this pen and ink combination where if I let the pen actually stopped writing with it for a little while and then I started writing again, it had a hard start. So I don't know if that was the ink personally. So that is Vinta Blue Blood Duzong Bugao. Day 20, and we have a Colorverse Mystic Mountain, and this one is a shimmer ink, which I'm trying very hard to shake up here because it's all stuck in the bottom. Oh goodness, that took a little, maybe I should have edited that out. And here I am putting it in my Zodiac Penco Virgo model of the abalone from Jonathan Brooks or Carolina Pen Company. And I really love this pen. I think the abalone or the resin is just beautiful. And I think this ink may not have been exactly the perfect match, but there, any excuse to use this pen. So this ink is this beautiful light blue and it's got a really pretty pink or rose gold. No, it's not rose gold, it's a pink shimmer. So once again, that is Colorverse Mystic Mountain. Now this pen has an extra fine nib, so I was wondering how the shimmer would work in it. And you can see when I am drawing this rectangle, you hardly see any shimmer come out. I did have to agitate the pen and kind of move it back and forth to try and make sure that the shimmer was evenly distributed. But it's still a very, very pretty blue that I think matches with the shades of blue in this pen. Probably, though, not the best combination of shimmer with the extra fine nib. And then I'm gonna go and do my sandwich bag splotches in my Hobonichi Cousin, and this definitely showed off the shimmer and the shading in this ink beautifully, and I'm so glad that I'm able to explore the inks in this manner and be able to see the way that, you know, there's so many different ways that you could use this ink. So here I am trying to paint, what am I painting here? I think it's a dahlia that I'm trying to paint. And it's so fun, actually, like I said before, painting with these inks, because when you add water, you do get the different, you know, the more diluted shade of this ink. And then when you go back in there with the more saturated ink, it really shows off the shading. It really shows off the shimmer. And it just is fun to have a little practice of painting every single day. And with 30 inks, 30 days, to have the ability to do a little bit every day is such, you know, it's such a fun practice. Look at the beautiful ink with that pink shimmer. Oh, stunning. Again, in the painting, you can really see the shimmer and the shading here, but then in the writing sample, the shimmer isn't very consistent. I do have to agitate the pen to even get a little bit of shimmer, but that could have been because it was the extra fine nib. But I still love the color of this ink overall. And I think even writing with the extra fine nib, there weren't any flow issues. It was just the consistent shimmer throughout that I didn't see as much. So that is Colorverse Mystic Mountain. Day 21, and we have Van Dieman's Aurora Australis, and this sample was sent to me by Shazia of Bleskett, Canada. She says this is one of her favorite inks, and I am putting it in my new Leonardo Furore Aqua Petra. And this pen was purchased secondhand off of Reddit, and the original buyer said that they had, the nib was tuned by Annabelle of Applebum. So placing a dot there on my 30-day grid. And look at that beautiful purple. Oh, and I actually really, really love this pen. I hope to use it in October in my 5-year journal. I just want to use this pen as much as possible. The nib, the fine nib on this is so incredibly smooth and also very, very wet flowing, which went really well with this ink. But this pen also feels so comfortable in the hand. The shape of it, the width of it, and the length of it really works well with my hand. So this particular ink, Aurora Australis, does have that base purple, and then it dries with a green sheen. The sheen in there, though, isn't as, I don't want to say severe, but it's not as prominent as the sheen in Vinta Blue Blood. The sheen almost kind of looks like this kind of dried layer on top when you see the sandwich bag swatches. It's still a very pretty ink, but I don't know if I like it because the sheen isn't so glaring in my eyes. But again, the purple in this is just gorgeous, and I'm very excited to keep using this. So then the next thing I'm going to do is actually paint with it in my Hobonichi A5 notebook, and this is where I am transcribing Anne of Green Gables. In this one, I just decided to do like a little kind of leafy plant where all I'm doing is really stippling with my paintbrush to get those little tiny dots and little effects on the branch. And this is where you can really see the green sheen. It's very, very prominent. And again, you can see there when it dries, it just looks green. It doesn't look purple anymore. But I'm glad that when I'm writing with it, I mean, the light from my lamp really only reflects that green sheen. But in the writing, it's not too bad. You can still see a lot of that purple, which is why I like it. But you can tell there in the swatch, there was a little bit of, I don't know what to call it. There was a little bit of crustiness that came off of the sheen. I'm not sure what that was. But the writing sample, the sheen is still really well balanced with the base color of the ink, and I really like this. So the two together were a great combination. Great flow, very smooth nib, really enjoyable. Day 22, and we have Diamine Ancient Copper. Again, an ink that I haven't tried before, and I'm putting this into my Hogtown pens on the edge of Oopsie, and that blank is from Turned Penco. And I thought, why not use a fall inspired ink with a blank that was originally fall inspired, but then ended up being a bit too teal, and that's why it's called On the Edge of Oopsie. So placing a drop there on my 30-day grid and swirling it around with my sample ink vial. And I think some people have compared this particular ink to, is it Dominant Industry Earl Grey tea in that orange color, or ginger chicken. And I really like this kind of darker orange coppery color. And my Hogtown Pens here has an extra fine Yovo nib, and the two together make a great wet flowing combination. This ink has really, really great shading, and this nib is very smooth, so I really enjoyed writing with these two. Just look at that. And then putting the drops down on my Hobonichi Cousin for my journaling. This really showed off the shading in this ink. Like, they look like little explosions on the paper. I really enjoy doing that. And then here I decided I would try and paint a different type of flower. I'm trying to work through a tutorial where I'm doing different types of flowers or different types of plants every day with my painting with the fountain pen ink. And challenging myself not just to do 30 days 30 inks, but to do a different flower and a different plant every day is definitely, for some people a little bit overwhelming. But I'm the type of person where if I'm in a challenge, I'm all into this challenge, and I will add another challenge to it if I need to. So this works out really, really well for me. I am driven by the goal of finishing, and I really like how these paintings look at the end, because look at the shading once it's starting to dry. So writing again with my Hogtown pens, I'm transcribing Anne of Green Gables, and I actually am making pretty good progress. During the months that I'm not doing 30 inks 30 days, I seem to lack the inspiration to try and transcribe every day, whereas with 30 inks 30 days, because I know I'm on a deadline, it really does inspire me and encourage me to write more and transcribe more. So there is the shading in my Hobonichi Cousin, and then you can see the way that it looks once I'm transcribing with it. This writing sample is fantastic. I really love this ink, and it's one I will probably keep inked for October, because it's a great fall color. So if you haven't tried it yet, you definitely should try Diamine Ancient Copper. Day 23, we have Diamine Earl Grey, and it's another one that I haven't tried, and I'm putting it into my Pilot Vanishing Point in the Gunmetal Rhodium. Now, this pen I have considered selling, only because I wasn't the biggest fan of this gray color, and when I first bought it, I think there was a different color that I wanted, like the black carbonesque. But now, as I'm using it with Earl Grey, did I say Earl Grey tea? I meant to just say Earl Grey, because this is a really pretty gray. And I know some people are like, but it's just gray. And sometimes you do need that. You just need a very basic gray color that you can use in so many different situations. And this particular ink matched perfectly with my Pilot Vanishing Point. So after putting these two together and writing with it, what a great experience. The Pilot Vanishing Point with the fine nib is my favorite Pilot nib. Absolutely love this nib. And then combined with this really wet flowing ink, the two together were fantastic. Such a smooth writer, no flow issues whatsoever. And I just found it really enjoyable. So I'm reconsidering whether or not I want to sell this, because this gray, or this gunmetal rhodium on the Vanishing Point, is growing on me again. It's funny how that works. There are some days where I'm like, I just want to sell all of them. And then when I start writing with them again, I'm like, nope, I love it. So then putting a few drops into my Hobonichi Cousin. And I was wondering, a lot of people like this because it does shade beautifully. And you didn't see it as much in the writing sample, but definitely in the sandwich bag method, you see the way that this shades. Plus, I have so much fun with this method because it's quick, it's easy, and you get such beautiful effects with it, and it's easy cleanup. And I don't feel like you need a ton of skill in order to be able to do the sandwich bag method. Everybody can do this, which is why I like it so much. And then here I am painting in my Hobonichi A5 notebook. And here I decide that I'm going to try and paint daisies. I know daisies aren't gray, but for me, it's just an exercise in trying to paint different florals. My only thing with my painting and my criticism with my own painting here is that I should have waited until the ink was a little bit drier before I added some of that detail. So I should have done wet on dry versus wet on wet, because I wanted the darker gray details to stand out more versus blend in. But it's still all a learning exercise in how to use fountain pen ink for painting. Yeah, here I added it too soon. I should have waited until it was dry. But really a smooth writing experience, and I'm so glad I paired these two together, because I love the way that it wrote, and you can really see the shading there. Apologies for the ancient copper coming through, but look at that. This was so fun to write with. It really made me love my Pilot Vanishing Point and the Gunmetal Rhodium again. But look at the pretty blue that came out when I added a bit of water. Really, really pretty. And I definitely think I will be keeping this for the future. So that is Diamine Earl Grey. And here we are at the end of day 23, and I actually really like the combination of all of these colors together. There's a very cool tone going on here, but then you've got the yellow going on there. But anyway, I'm really happy that we're actually on day 23 already. This has been a really, really fun challenge for me. Now, out of all of these, which one was my favorite ink? And I actually have to say my favorite ink was Diamond Inkvent Olive Swirl. I love the colors of it. I love the shimmer, and it was a perfect match for the Pelikan M400. My least favorite ink had to be the Vinta Blue Blood Duzong Bugao. Mainly because, like, even now as I'm looking at it, that red sheen is enough to give me a headache. Unfortunately, I have quite a bit of light sensitivity. I can get migraines easily, so that red sheen is just not for me. Another one that I really liked, but it didn't seem to show off as much of the shimmer, was the Colorverse Mystic Mountain. Now, my favorite pen to write with in this series, or in this section, was my Leonardo Ferrore Aqua Petra. I really love the feel of that pen in my hand, and the nib is so smooth, and it works really well with the Van Dieman's Aurora Australis. So that is my favorite pen out of this 8 days. All right, so let me know what you guys thought of all of these combinations, what your thoughts were, and what you think. Did you think my favorites and my least favorites were what you guys thought it was going to be? All right, but that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, please leave me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.